Now, the tourism sector was heavily impacted by COVID-19. It's now trying to find ways to revitalize itself. From Monday until Wednesday next week, the Technological Higher Education Network South Africa, the Department of Tourism, and the Technological Higher Education Association from Ireland will discuss a program intended to upskill and reskill tourism and hospitality personnel. Now, this online support program is called the Tourism Education Gateway Platform. For more on this, I'm joined by Khanya Mtshali from the Technological Higher Education Network South Africa. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, Khanya. Let's start with, the tourism and hospitality sector. We have seen it as an industry or people see it as an industry of temporary jobs. What are you going to do to help change the view of that, to make it into an industry that has more long-term employment?
Well, I think, as a technological higher education network of South Africa, we felt it was necessary to engage with industry and government on this, because what we realized, having spoken to our students at our member institutions, was that these jobs were seen as transient. They weren't seen to offer any term of career growth. And so it was essential for us to speak to our partners in government as well as our partners in industry to see how we could perhaps establish an initiative that could offer the opportunity to reskill and upskill tourism personnel, that would recognize prior learning as well as prioritize lifelong learning. It was very critical for us in a country as diverse as South Africa to recognize, different forms of qualifications and to ensure that these qualifications that we have that exist, that they're portable and that they're relevant to people across the world, that people can take these qualifications and go to wherever part of the world and really make a living for themselves, especially at this time in our economy where things are getting tough, where inflation is increasing, and it's becoming really challenging for young people in particular to have any hope.
Now, in addition to the lack of, career development, there are a number of qualifications that also don't appear to be recognized. And you mentioned, to send these people with qualifications globally to wherever in the world. Why is that so important?
I think it's important because South Africa is part of a global community. And here at eNCA, we've established relationships with the Irish. In particular, we have a great relationship with the Atlantic Technological University in Galway. And we've seen how their version of the Tourism Gateway platform has really benefited their students and allowed their students to become global players in the tourism and hospitality industry. And so we felt, as South Africans, we have a fantastic tourism product. And so it's necessary for us to train our young people to think about themselves as global players, to understand that our tourism product forms part of a global ecosystem. We want to broaden their minds. We want to expose them to new things and ensure that they have new experiences. And we do that through reviewing our curricula and ensuring that, these work placements that we offer them are relevant, and that they're on par with global standards, so that we can really take up our place as, a country that has so many wonderful tourism products to offer the world.
And let's talk about, those tourism products. But before we actually get to that, there is also a lack of standardization when it comes to wages. You get one operator that charges you a sum for a specific product, then you get another operator that charges you something, totally different. So why is it important to have these measures in place?
I think it's important because it plays into ensuring that the tourism and hospitality sector attracts tourism and hospitality personnel. You need to make it known that this is an industry that pays people for their labor. That's what we have found, in our conversations with tourism personnel, that they don't necessarily feel like there's any equity in terms of pay. And that's why next week, when we conduct our workshop, at the Radisson Blu Hotel in Umhlanga, we are going to have these conversations with government and with industry regarding pay. How do you ensure that we are standardizing pay? How do we ensure that we are transparent about what industry can and can't do for its personnel? it's very critical, because young people are struggling. It's not that they don't want to enter the industry. It's that they have to think about supporting their families. They have to think about supporting themselves, most importantly. So we, as higher education, as government, as industry, we cannot work in silos. We have to be in conversation with each other. We have to work collaboratively to ensure that we are all sending the same message out, to ensure that this particular sector remains attractive and that it remains an industry that South Africa can depend on, to generate income.
Now, you mentioned, the collaboration between, government and yourself. And another important question is also climate change. I mean, it's something that we also can't, look away from, because especially in KZN, we've seen now recently with the floods, and things might get worse. So this is definitely something that needs to be tackled by government as well, and with yourself working with government. How important is it for you to take a look at climate change when it comes to the tourism sector here in South Africa?
Oh, it's critical. It's absolutely critical. And I think, we established a research cluster, and our research cluster is dedicated to investigating, how will global disasters affect our tourism product? How will it potentially dissuade people from entering this industry and dissuade people from coming to South Africa? The flooding in KZN was absolutely terrible. And in some respects, it was an avoidable tragedy, and so that's where government comes into play, where we sort of advise on the types of interventions, the types of protocols and techniques that can put into place to ensure that we can deal with this effectively. Climate change is not going anywhere. And so we have to ensure that our tourism product is robust, that it's reflexive, and that it can recover in the face of these global disasters, as well as the pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic had a huge impact on tourism globally. So we need to ensure that we're not just in the process of recovering. We have to be robust. We have to confront these issues effectively.
And I'd also like to ask, what South Africa's tourism product as a whole, how can we make it better?
I think we have to innovate, and that's very critical and essential to our ethos here at eNCA. We are all about innovation. We have to look at ways in which to make our tourism product different. So immersive experiences, authentic experiences. We've got to look at what our strengths are as a country. We have fantastic indigenous knowledge systems. How do we make that relevant and interesting to international tourists who want to see that side of South Africa? They're not necessarily interested in always going to the 5-star hotels. How do we take what we have and exploit our strengths and take pride in our heritage? It's a combination of really taking what we have, exploiting the best out of it, as well as looking at developing technologies and innovations and making them come together in order to really better and strengthen our tourism product, which has long been renowned for its beauty, for how varied and diverse it is.
And very lastly, you mentioned all the young people that you want to upskill and, make part of a global community. But how does one get involved?
Well, I think for the time being, we are going to come together to establish the Tourism Gateway platform. It will be an online portal where young people, or really tourism personnel in general, it's not just relevant to young people in particular, it's about including all tourism personnel who can apply to be part of the Tourism Gateway platform, where they'll be able to upskill and reskill themselves. We are also going to make provision for those who want to be entrepreneurs. That's something else that we want to tap into, because South Africa is a very entrepreneurial country. And so really it's going to be an initiative that we will establish in partnership with the Department of Tourism, and we will be advertising and marketing it as best as possible. However, we want to encourage all tourism personnel, regardless of age, to really look out for the Tourism Gateway platform. We really do believe that it is critical to ensuring that people have these qualifications, these accredited programs, that it gives them a sense of self-esteem and allows them to realize that they're part of a global community and that their skills matter.
Thank you so much. Very informative there. Khanya Mtshali from the Technological Higher Education Network of South Africa.